Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Unfound Now. It's been a little while. There was no episode at the end of September due to, Hurricane Helene. There have been so many hurricanes recently, it's hard to keep track. But I think it was Hurricane Helene that got in the way of Unfound Now for September of 2024 happening. But here we are at the end of October, and I've picked out a disappearance for you to analyze, a recent disappearance, and it comes to us from Kingman, Arizona. Now, hopefully all of you are podcast listeners to the Unfound podcast. You know that way back in 2017, we were in Kingman, Arizona for the disappearance of Tyler Stice, and then very close to there, Golden Valley, as it called, Arizona, right down the street from Kingman, for the disappearance of Jordan Carvalho. So this is part of the United States we are covering. That's where we are today for Unfound Now. And the woman's name is Cynthia McCoy. She is 63 years old, and we're going to get into the circumstances of her disappearance. And this took place back in late August, so about 2 months ago. Before I get started, I hope you will give this video a thumbs up. Please share it. Please like it. If you are new to Unfound, if you're just hearing about Unfound for the first time today, subscribe to this channel. Go find Unfound, the podcast, on your podcast application, maybe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever. I would appreciate all of that. If you'd like to go one step further, maybe a couple different steps further, you can hit the join button below on YouTube, and you will get some things that other people do not. Or you can go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Sign up there, and that's another way to support what we do here. This series, Unfound Now, got started back in the summer of 2020, so over 4 years ago. The reason this series exists, it gives me an opportunity to look at recent disappearances and do analysis on them, both for my education and for your education, because this is the main way I think all of us find out about disappearances. We see like a local news story. Well, what we do here is try to take these local news stories apart, kind of read between the lines. Well, what is really going on? Where is this going to go? What could have happened? And from this, I think we can all learn about disappearances. And I think by analyzing these recent disappearances, I think it then makes all of these long-term disappearances, the ones we cover on the podcast that are 10 years old, 20 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, I think when we get more educated, those ones become more likely to solve. And there's a lot of families who have been suffering for a long time, and they have no idea what happened to their loved ones, going way back to the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, going way back. That is the reason Unfound Now exists. So let's now take a look at the circumstances of Cynthia's disappearance. But first, as many of you know, I'm all about learning. And so the 3 learning points for this particular episode of Unfound Now are, number 1, coincidence or something else. Number 2, straightforward, it seems. And then number 3, the surprise. All right, let's go to the article, at least one article that has been written about Cynthia's disappearance. There's not a lot of news out there regarding her disappearance, and all of the articles that do exist say about the same thing. So I'm just going to take one of them, I'm going to read from it, and then we will go from there. Cynthia Marie McCoy, 63, was last seen in the early morning hours of August 20th. McCoy and a friend had been driving home after visiting a business in the 2700 block of Highway 66 when a tire went flat. A man driving a white truck reportedly approached the women and offered to help. McCoy left with the man and went back to the business to find a spare tire. They returned to the vehicle, the broken down vehicle, approximately 30 minutes later, but McCoy left shortly after in the truck with the same man in the same truck. So she and a friend are in this vehicle. They just leave some business. Something happens to their tire. They break down. A guy in a white truck comes along. Cynthia decides to go with him, with maybe not the greatest choice in the world. But she gets in the truck. The female friend stays with the car. They go back to this business. I guess there are people at this other business that verify that this guy and Cynthia went back there. A little bit later, the guy and Cynthia come back to the spot where the vehicle broke down. The friend is still there. The tire is still flat. And then Cynthia again leaves with this guy in his truck, never to be seen again. So they returned to the vehicle approximately 30 minutes later, but McCoy, Cynthia, left shortly after in the truck with a man. McCoy has not been seen since and was reported missing on August 22nd. The truck pictured is believed to be an early 2000 model, possibly 2000 to 2005, Ford F-150 King Cab truck. The camper shell on the Ford does not appear to be that for that model truck and sticks out over the tailgate several inches. It's too long. The driver's side rear tire is missing the center dust cover of the rim. So it's kind of like where the bolts go in. If you ever changed a tire, the part that usually covers that area up is missing. The truck was last seen at the business between 7:40 and 7:45 a.m., traveling toward Highway 66 from the parking lot and leaving the area in an unknown direction. This would have been with Cynthia inside. The man is described as an older male with long gray hair and a long gray beard, wearing a light blue T-shirt. McCoy is a white female, approximately 5 feet tall and 110 pounds. She has short black hair and brown eyes and was last seen wearing a blue spaghetti-strapped tank top and carrying a black purse with Route 66 emblem on the side. Anyone with information regarding the whereabouts of McCoy or the man she was last seen with is encouraged to contact the number 928-753-0753 or 1-800-522-4312. So there you go. Those are the circumstances. That is the only real article that has been written about Cynthia's disappearance. There's only been one piece of news, and it's a big piece of news, that has happened since this article was written. And I'm going to read that big piece of news to you right now. And this news came out about a month after Cynthia went missing. It turns out that the Mojave County Sheriff's Office has tracked down this guy, tracked down this truck, tracked down this guy, and spoken to him about Cynthia. And that is all we know. There's no reports that this guy was taken into custody or anything else. This is still an unsolved disappearance. So when this article was written, August 22nd, nobody knew who this guy was. And I guess at the time, it would have made all the sense in the world that something happened. She's with this guy. He does something to her, kills her, or whatever. And that's why she's missing. Makes all the sense in the world. The issue, though, is at the end of September, given the description and everything, they were able to track this guy down. They spoke to him, and he is surely not in custody for anything. So we have to use that as the basis for our analysis in total. But I want to get into some of those intricacies now by going back to those learning points that I talked about just a few minutes ago. So, point number one, the learning point for this disappearance of Cynthia. Number one was coincidence or something else. It's one of the biggest questions we ask with disappearances. If a person goes missing and something maybe seems out of the ordinary happens at the same time, are those two items connected or not? Probably not just in Unfound's history, but in 21st century American disappearance history, Most well-known one is Brian Schaefer. Is it a coincidence that on the night that he went missing, he also was not seen leaving the Ugly Tuna that night? At least for anybody who's seen the video. I have my own opinions on that, but I'm not going to get into that in this Unfound Now episode. But is him allegedly not being seen on that video part of the disappearance or not? Nobody knows. Everybody has their own insights and opinions and theories, but there's no clear-cut decision either way because, of course, his disappearance is still unsolved. Is that a coincidence or not? For Cynthia, we look at it as, well, is it a coincidence that she goes missing and this vehicle that she was in, I guess it wasn't her vehicle that had the flat tire, but is it a coincidence that there was this flat tire and she goes missing at the same time? Or we can ask it another way. If the tire doesn't go flat, does she go missing? I think perceptually, at least 2 months into this disappearance that is still unsolved, I guess the answer is no. I think we look at this and say, well, if there's no flat tire, the friend probably drives Cynthia home, and that's that. Maybe. But until this disappearance is solved, we're never going to know. But you should know, I'm not really a big fan of coincidences. I happen to believe that these things are connected. When you run into something like this, something for the most part, I think it's safe. If you were a betting person and going to Las Vegas and had to put money on something, that in any sort of disappearance, we have like something like this happen, it's best to say, you know what? This quirky fact is somehow connected to the disappearance. Now, we have some other examples. In fact, many examples, but I'm going to give you a couple unsolved ones, but then I'm going to give you a solved disappearance where it wasn't connected. So it's never a sure thing. These are really just statistics and odds and everything. There is no hard, fast rule. But I'll give you the solved one first, and that was Robbie Hurt. He was a man who had some drug problems, and on the night that he went missing, he was getting high, and the story was that he went to a friend of his, and he actually overdosed, and the friend brought him back to life with Narcan, and then Robbie took off in a truck. His truck was found like a mile down the road. Robbie wasn't seen again. And then, I forget how many years later, but just a couple years ago from when I'm doing this recording, his remains were found not too far from his truck along the side of the road in some trees. And it's believed that he eventually did overdose one way or the other. But we knew about this Narcan incident, and the thinking, we had to decide something. Myself and the audience, my assistants, whoever else, of course the guest as well, is this Narcan incident connected to his disappearance? Did this Narcan incident really even take place? And I was under the opinion that something went on at the house and this Narcan issue did not really happen. It was somebody covering up an overdose. I think I ended up being wrong on this one. And I think now here in 2024 that it's just believed the way it was kind of explained. That he went over there, almost overdosed there. Friend saves him. Robbie takes off, only to overdose again. And he wasn't found for a couple years. He was found by accident by, I think, some construction workers or something. So that was a coincidence. It surely was. At least that's the way it's accepted now. Now, a couple other examples, though, going in the opposite direction. Now, these are unsolved. Mark Heimbaugh. Boy went missing in New Jersey many years ago. Is it a coincidence that there was this fire not far from his house on the same day that he disappeared? There are a lot of theories about why he went missing, most of them being that he was kidnapped, but still, there's no firm decision on whether this fire had anything to do, that he was interested in seeing or not. We don't know if they're connected or not. I want you to know, I spent a good couple months some years ago trying to find out the nature of this fire, any paperwork, could not get anything. So I've tried to figure it out, no idea. So it's still up in the air. Was this fire meant to lure him out of there? Did somebody know that he would come out of his house by himself and somebody would kidnap him? Or was it spur of the moment that somebody kidnapped him? The fire had nothing to do with it necessarily. Or did Mark really get kidnapped at all? And then the last one is Mandy Stokes. She went missing while being on the phone with her boyfriend. Now, the boyfriend is not a suspect because he was way on the other side of the United States. But she was talking to him. The phone cut out. He tried to call her back. Mandy was never heard from again. Allegedly, she was in her car, sitting in her car while she was talking to him. Her car was later found abandoned. Still unclear. Is it a coincidence that she was talking to her boyfriend when she went missing? Nobody knows. So coming back to Cynthia, what state was Cynthia in? That would tell us a lot whether this is a coincidence or not. But we have this truck that I'm going to get to in a second. Something you always have to consider with disappearances. Thinking about those coincidences, these other facts. And when I say coincidence, we're looking for things that are unique. Somebody breaking down having a flat tire is unique. So what then are the odds that that flat tire leads to a disappearance? So we're always looking for those unique facts that are involved in the disappearance narrative, and how can we connect one to the other, and should they be connected at all? Learning point number 2, straightforward, it seems. Now, you should know, at least within the way I have come up with my own classification for disappearances, the most straightforward ones are what we call the man-said types of disappearances. And that is when husband says that wife took off in the middle of the night. He wakes up, I don't know where she is, even though her car's there, her purse is there, her phone's there, her money's there, everything she owns, her clothes are there, everything, her car, everything. But she's gone, and the guy's like, I just have no idea what happened. Or it's, oh yeah, well, we were just sitting at home watching TV one day, and a white truck pulled up, and my wife got up, went out the door, and I never saw her again. I know what you're saying. Hopefully you all listen to Unfound, but if you're just getting new to the podcast or whatever, these are common stories. And in those situations, those disappearances are pretty straightforward. They are the most straightforward of any type of disappearance that we feature on Unfound, or any disappearance that even exists. But that doesn't mean they're going to get solved. You have to understand that the straightforward, as far as when I say straightforward, I mean understanding. All disappearances of all types are hard to solve for a lot of different reasons. It's only, I have it in my notes here, it's only our overactive imaginations that make some of them more complicated than they are. And the standard I use for that is there are a lot of disappearances that go on for a while, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. And when they do get solved, they're usually, to use the word again, pretty straightforward. That the resolution is really not crazy. You're like, oh my gosh, I am stunned. Even with the disappearance of Mary Jane Van Gilder, where we found out that she went missing in 1945, took off with another man, lived a completely new life, left her other husband and children back in West Virginia, moved to Arkansas and had new children and everything else, and then died in 1989 or 1990, like 45 years later or whatever. Yes, that is a crazy story and unique, but given the circumstances, the understanding of her disappearance, not that crazy. And I don't have time to get into all those specifics, but that was eventually solved earlier this year, and I give investigator Adam Turner all the credit in the world on that. That's what I mean by straightforward. Rarely when a disappearance is solved, we're all like, oh my gosh. Not all missing people seem as if they've been beamed up to a UFO. There are certainly some where it's, well, we have phone ping information and we have video and everything else, and still the person manages to disappear. Those certainly are tough ones, but I'm not one to believe in UFOs and things like that. So something happened. Something that is worldly, that doesn't defy the laws of physics happened. And then rarely, those are really, really, really rare disappearances. Most disappearances, I think, are pretty straightforward. Although, on many of them, you maybe have 2 competing theories, maybe 3, but that's it. Usually, you have a pretty good handle on what happened, within the thick part of the bell curve. For Cynthia, it seems straightforward, and that's why this is called Straightforward. It seems that she got picked up by, I guess, some guy she didn't know. It's unclear on that. And then she disappeared. And it would seem straightforward-wise that, well, she got in the vehicle with the wrong person. And that happens. It's rare, but she got in the truck with the wrong person, and that guy did something to her. It happens. But there's always that thing, it seems, in some of these. This fact that pops up, and in fact, I just had this on Unfound this past Friday with the disappearance of Clint Walker. This is a disappearance where it seems that guy was having some life issues, had some health issues, money issues, and he got off at this one bus stop where he usually got off near Mount Davis in Washington to go hiking. And they checked video on all the buses in the area after that, never got back on the bus. And so the thinking was, well, he's 48 years old. He went out there, maybe had a heart attack. Maybe he had an accident. Of course, a lot of things can happen out there. Maybe a lot of things can happen. And he had some health issues, and he had infection in his mouth. A lot of things can happen. And then you find out that seemingly the jacket that he was wearing the day he went missing somehow ended up back at his place. And once again, something that seems straightforward isn't what you thought. And that brings us to learning point number 3 for the disappearance of Cynthia. Number 3, the surprise. Of course, the surprise, I think, in this disappearance, at least the way I look at it, I don't know anything about this disappearance more than any of you do. There really hasn't been a lot written about her disappearance since it happened, except the update that I already mentioned. I'm going to mention it again. But this white truck and the owner have been tracked down. They were found. It seemed it took a while. Of course, she went missing in middle to late August, and the update on that article wasn't until the end of September. So let's just say it was a month. It took a month to track down whoever was driving that truck. And I have to tell you, that doesn't necessarily, for me, make it suspicious. It very well may be that this person driving this truck has nothing to do with her disappearance and didn't even know that she was missing. You have to remember, there was just one article written about her disappearance. Very possible this person didn't even know that. The issue, though, is we don't know what this person's story is, and we may never know. I'm going to guess they're in the local Kingman, Arizona area. They know who this person is, but I live in Clearwater Beach, Florida. I don't know how I could find that out. Used to live in Las Vegas, not anymore, which is kind of close to Kingman. And you should know, I know Kingman very well. I don't know. Over the course of 4 to 5 years, 2005 to 2009, I probably went down there for work from Las Vegas, 20 times. Been all over that, I guess I call it a little town. And I've been on this road where this happened. We're going way back to the day. So we have this surprise that, we thought it was this person in this white truck did something to her. Nope. Person was tracked down. My perception is this person's still driving around like this. as a free person here in almost November of 2024. So how common are surprises, and do these surprises usually end up being what cracks a disappearance? Surprises are rare. Something like I just talked about with Clint Walker, certainly a surprise. I will tell you that I think the consensus on that is that he had two jackets that looked the same. That really the jacket they found back at his place is not the one he was wearing that day. They just look similar. A lot of people have clothing that looks similar. So I could point out, for example, Chris McNeil. This is a recent disappearance we featured on Unfound. He went missing, and then some years later, it seems the same Chris McNeil got some traffic citations. How is that possible? I don't know. Very well could be that somebody stole his ID or something, stole his identity, still missing. He was really missing. This person who stole his ID or his identification didn't have anything to do with his disappearance, but still the person might have heard, oh, Chris McNeil is missing, I'm going to steal his identity. This happens. Very well could have been Chris McNeil starting a new life somewhere but never changed his name. That's kind of rare. And, of course, the other choice could be that it's a whole totally different Chris McNeil. Chris McNeil is a fairly common name in the United States, but it is a surprise. Just when you think in his disappearance that he really did walk off into the woods, he avoided this trial or court date he was supposed to go to, and then you hear about information about him still being possibly around some years later. Certainly a surprise. My experience, though, these surprises usually end up not going anywhere and not really being anything. We might talk about the disappearance of Nico Lisi, and he went missing. He was from New York, went missing in Tennessee. And then some years after, his truck was found parted out on somebody's property. A big surprise. He and his truck were missing, and then just by accident, they happened upon his truck, and it's all parted out. It was like the only thing left was like the frame and the cab or something. It was a pickup truck with the rims, the engine, the transmission, all of it's gone. And that's certainly a surprise, but you should also know that was some years ago, and his disappearance is still unsolved. Even though they know who owned the place where the truck was found, they know a lot about the people around Nico there in Tennessee, it's still unsolved. So even if we know the guy who was driving the white truck with Cynthia, who picked Cynthia up, that's no guarantee, even if the person had something to do with her disappearance, that this disappearance is going to be solved anytime soon. Then we could look at a disappearance like Julianne Gillet. This goes back several, at least a couple decades now. And this is a disappearance from Washington. She goes missing, and then, forget how long later, her purse, and it was her purse because her ID and everything were in it, was found in a hotel many miles away, and not in the lobby, like up on the 8th or 20th floor of this hotel, just sitting like, you know how they usually have like a couple chairs or a table like near the elevator of decent hotels. It was like that. It was just sitting there that somebody found it. Big surprise. How do you explain it? Well, it is believed that Julianne was murdered. No proof of that. But it is one of those LeMans said type of disappearances. Very well could be the guy in her life did something to her and took her purse and tried to make it look like she was in that hotel. No proof of that. But that was certainly a big surprise. And that was years and years ago, still unsolved. And once again, her name is Julianne Gillet, last name Jaillet, if you want to look that up. Look up that episode of Unfound. But these surprises, like I said, are rare. And still, most of the time, they don't lead anywhere. It's really going back to taking the surprise out of it. It's all the other information that usually solves a disappearance. The problem we have right now with Cynthia's disappearance is that it's only a couple months old. And it would not surprise me. Of course, I hope she is found alive tomorrow. But if she isn't, it wouldn't surprise me that a year from now, or 6 months from now, a year from now, we'll have more information, more facts about her disappearance than we have right now. Of course, I hope she's found alive as soon as possible. So surprises, they happen. Just not a lot of proof that they automatically lead to resolutions of disappearances. So what is my overall analysis? This is one of those where the saying disappearances are about people, not circumstances. That's a phrase that I started, by the way. I would like to know a lot more about Cynthia herself. Because after covering 350 disappearances, you tell me about a person. I don't even need to know the circumstances. You tell me about what's going on in that person's life. Any addictions, any money problems, any relationship problems, all that kind of stuff. And you can pretty closely narrow down why that person went missing. You don't even need to know about a white pickup truck or a flat tire or anything else. You can do that with a high level of probability. I will also say that the driver brought Cynthia back to where the first vehicle, had the flat tire. That really says something to me. Remember, this truck pulls over, they're broken down, she gets in the truck, goes back to where they just were, comes back with this guy, or maybe there was multiple people in the truck, I don't know. And then they leave, she's never seen again. We don't know what this person said. Of course, we knew what the person said, then we would have a much better handling really on what went on. But that this person with the white truck chose to go back there and stop and allow himself or herself to be seen by this female friend who was with this vehicle that had the flat tire. And the truck's there, and of course the license plate can be looked at and all that type of stuff. And by the way, they know it was a white truck because they had it on video or something like that. This doesn't sound like somebody who's trying to get away with a crime. Doesn't sound like somebody who is planning to get away with a murder. If so, why wouldn't this person take the other person? Oh, just leave your vehicle there. We'll go get a tire for it. No big problem. Get in my truck. We'll go. And then you have 2 victims instead of 1. That's something that goes through my mind. So I'm not automatically thinking that there was foul play here. Like I said, it would help if we knew a lot more about Cynthia. What if we found out that she had a drug problem? What if we found out that she had some mental health issues? What if we found this out and that out? And it would make a huge difference in this disappearance. Whereas on the other hand, if we found out that she didn't have any of those problems, that she was a teetotaler, would never touch drugs, not even aspirin, never even smoked, and on and on and on, then that would then push us more toward the idea, this is starting to sound like some sort of foul play. That doesn't necessarily mean it was done by the person in the white truck. But you should know something else, and this is something I do sometimes for these disappearances for Unfound now. I did look up Cynthia's criminal record. And really don't want to get too deep into it, but she certainly did have a very interesting 2023 with troubles with the law. And so, absolutely, that has to be considered in any disappearance. Doesn't make me care any less about her. We've covered addicts and prostitutes, and we've covered drug dealers, covered disappearance of drug dealers, and everybody else on Unfound. I don't care. the criminal records certainly can point us in directions. Going back to disappearances are about people, not circumstances. So that is the recent August of 2024 disappearance of Cynthia McCoy from Kingman, Arizona. She's 63 years old, broke down in a car with a friend of hers, got picked up, got taken back to the place where they just were. The truck, whoever's driving the truck and Cynthia come back, stop for a little bit. They leave, leaving the person with the vehicle. Cynthia never seen again. I'll try to keep tabs on this disappearance. Of course, I've got a lot on my plate. Maybe you want to do that as well, looking for any new information coming out of Kingman about Cynthia's disappearance. So there you go. Unfound now for Cynthia McCoy. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this channel. If you're unfamiliar with the podcast, find it on Spotify or on iTunes, or you can just listen to them right here on YouTube. And I will talk to you again next month.